Hi guys, welcome to another video. This time I'm going to show you my studio, or at least what was my studio for the last 8 years. We're actually moving now, and that means that I'm gonna have a new studio soon. Wow, that's kind of strange. I've gotten somewhat used to the mess that is my studio. It's a bit of an advanced Tetris sort of affair because there's really not an awful lot of space in here. It was way too small already when I moved here, and it's not gotten any better because I've got into more things that I'm doing now, like making music again and drawing, painting and all sorts of stuff that I didn't used to do in my old place. By now it's such a mess that whenever I need to start a new project I have to have finished all the other projects because there's simply no space whatsoever. And whenever I have something going on, a big project, then there's gonna be a whole lot of mess everywhere because I can't put things away, since it's really difficult to put things away when everything is like advanced Tetris. And that's just the reality of my studio, basically. It's always been not ideal. The other problem I had with this place was that I had very uncomfortable ways of recording. One of my backgrounds is this shelf here, and if I sit in front of that shelf, which was one of my backgrounds, I had to sit on this tiny little stool and squeeze myself in between my desk and my sofa. Then I sat there and made my video, and yeah, afterwards my back was trashed. So yeah, not really ideal. And then of course the wall color. Ugh, don't get me started. Such a pain in the neck to color correct. But of course in a rented place you don't really have that much of a choice. So very difficult to make YouTube videos here. This was one of the reasons why we decided to move. There were just too many things that I couldn't really do in this space, and especially as a photographer I never had any proper studio space. Like I couldn't have a backdrop or something like that because it's just way too small, and that I want to change in the new place for sure. This studio is basically a real usable studio, not something that people usually show you in those studio tours where everything is super neat and tidy and there's no mess. And yeah, I'm not like that. I always make a huge mess when I work, especially when I'm working on projects. It's chaos pure. I find it somewhat inspiring to have a bit of chaos, but lately it has been too much chaos, I would say. So what I have in here is everything related to photography. All my cameras didn't fit in here. I would like to say all my cameras would fit in here, but no, they don't. There always was a shelf in the living room as well where I used to keep my cameras. Yeah, now it's not there anymore. It's all packed and ready to go. I have a lot of cameras, a lot of analog cameras, and that means there's not an awful lot of space for them here. I have them in drawers, I have them on shelves. Another thing that I have in here is a lot of equipment for making music, because that's something I do a lot of the time as well. And this is actually one of my main pursuits at the moment. I have guitars in here and ukuleles and my modular synthesizer that I built myself, and yeah, all sorts of stuff like that. The other thing I have in here is a whole lot of electronic scrap, like a soldering iron, a hot air station, and lots of electronic parts, because I'm building synthesizer modules and also guitar pedals. That's one of the big things that I always do here, electronics projects. I also have a 3D printer that I use for printing camera parts and all sorts of different things like that. Now, the other stuff that I have in here is mostly to do with drawing and painting. I have lots of pens, paper, paint, all sorts of different materials for drawing and painting. And this is something that I do quite often when I have space on my desk, which I don't normally have. So lately, not really such a big option, because I now have a big computer on my desk and this big computer is kind of in the way. We were actually planning on moving right after I moved here to this place because it was just too small for us, really. My husband also has a bit of a problem, like book hoarding. Basically, I've defended the studio against his books. Everywhere else in this house, there are books. There are books in the wardrobes even, and there are books everywhere, under the ceiling, everywhere there are books. Except in my studio, there's only a tiny little shelf where there are books, and those are drawing books. So I kind of stopped putting any books in here because I didn't want to give him any ideas. And this was the main reason why we needed to move. My husband didn't have enough space for books anymore. There were just piles everywhere. All the shelves are in 2 rows and 4 rows in places. And this studio was just getting way out of hand. Basically everything is in these tiny little compartments. There are drawers of pens, and there are drawers of paper, and there are drawers of paints and film and random electronic scrap, and yeah. The biggest thing I have in the studio is the sofa, because this actually doubles as a guest room, even though I think we've only used it as a guest room twice. Most of the time it's just a sofa where I hang out, and it's also rather comfortable. I tend to sometimes do things on there, like make music at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. when I can't sleep, and it's nice to have in the studio. I think if you have a studio, you should have a sofa in there, no matter what you do. It's just really important to have that kind of thing. Under the sofa there is something special, namely all my guitar pedals. The ones that I bought and the ones that I built. I just keep them there in a row. I don't really have a pedal board because I change my mind about it so often. I just like to plug whatever I want to use in that moment, and it works better for me. It's not really that great that they're on the floor all the time because it gets dusty, but I hope in the new place I have a better solution for that, so that I can also build more pedals, since right now I'm out of space. On the walls I have my ukuleles, and I have 2 of them. One is a concert one and the other is a bass. And then there's also a tiny one which is a normal soprano one, but that's terrible because that's just some random thing off Amazon that I bought when I first got into playing the ukulele. I wasn't really sure whether I would really get into it, and I didn't want to invest so much money. And it's okay as long as you just play the typical chords that everyone plays, but if you want to move down the fret, oh no, don't do that. It's quite terrible. And I don't really know how to fix it because it's just such a weird thing. Apart from the ukuleles, I also have 2 guitars. Both are Mustangs. One is a very modded blue Squier Bullet Mustang, which is a lot of fun. They're both Mustangs, both Squier Bullet Mustangs, because I just enjoy that guitar so much. And I wanted to have 2 different versions. One of them has humbuckers, the other one is gonna have P90s. I've not installed them yet. I'm gonna mod them in the new place because I simply do not have the space on my desk to mod a guitar right now. It's just impossible to do certain things. Now the other big thing that I have in the studio is my desk. My desk is just some silly IKEA thing. On the desk there's my Hackintosh that I built a while back, like in 2020, when my old laptop broke. And that one is amazing. It works really, really well. And if you want to watch a video about that, then this one I use for music recording, for picture editing, for video editing, for all sorts of stuff. It's very useful and it runs super fast. It can edit in 4K, but I don't normally shoot in 4K because that's just too much space. The monitor is a color accurate sRGB monitor, which might strike you as weird because I'm a photographer, but I have to say that it really doesn't make any difference, for me at least, because I don't really have to be super color accurate most of the time. Most of the stuff that I have to have color accurate is seen on screens anyway. And if I really need it, I normally do a test print, so I don't really have very fast turnaround times. I don't really need to have it fast, and I can just order a print to see whether it's right and then correct from there. But with the sRGB monitor, I've had no problems whatsoever. It's actually very good. And if you don't have the money for a better screen than sRGB, then just stick with that. It's pretty good, I would say. Attached to the desk, I have a microphone arm, and the microphone on there is just a really cheap Behringer XM8500 or something like that. That's probably wrong. I just packed it, so I don't know. This microphone has no business being as good as it is for the price. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for something cheap, but it only has XLR, so you need a proper audio interface for it with a good preamp. I use a Fathead with it, which is like a cloud lifter. It's to raise the volume a bit, and that's what I use for voiceovers. I don't sing, so I don't really need that, but I use it for voiceovers mostly. Another arm on here is for an overhead filming rig that can take an iPad or an iPhone, and that's how I normally film stuff like my electronics videos. Now, under the monitor, I have a little shelf to raise the monitor up, and on that sits also my Focusrite Scarlett 18i20 audio interface. This was an upgrade from the Focusrite Scarlett Solo, which works fine for recording all sorts of stuff. I like the sound of it. It's clean, it's nothing fancy, it's fine. And the 18i20 had a very good price. It was one of those second generation ones that you can get for a reduced price. I would recommend that. I've had no problems with the audio recording quality. It's been really amazing for me, and I use it to record my modular with it. It has lots of different inputs and it works really well. I would recommend it. Then under that I have an Alesis Midiverb, which is a reverb unit, digital, from the 90s. And a lot of people would scoff at that sort of thing as a reverb. You can find software reverbs that are much better than that and sound much more convincing as reverb goes. But there is just something about it I can't place. Maybe it's because all the music that I loved as a teenager was recorded with this sort of reverb unit, and it's just my sound, basically. I love that thing. Would recommend. They're getting more and more expensive, so if you're gonna buy one soon, because in the near future it's gonna be too expensive for you, I bet. That's basically what I have in outboard equipment here, and the rest is just my modular, which is a Eurorack system that I built myself. I built most of the modules from scratch, from electronics parts. There's some board modules, but not an awful lot. Most of it I built myself. It was lots of fun to build it. Expensive, but very worth it. I'm very happy with the music that I'm getting out of it. There's also an AE modular starter rack in there, which is also really interesting. It's the cheaper variant with the little tiny patch cables, and that I got to get into a modular workflow, and that worked really well. The starter system is very East Coast, so I don't know, that's not for everyone, but I thought it was quite interesting. It was a good way of getting into it, because that meant I could just expand it with Eurorack and not ruin myself completely, which I still have done with the Eurorack. How can you not? It's just the law of Eurorack. You're gonna ruin yourself. Don't get started with it. It's a slippery slope. Don't do drugs, kids. Now I also have all sorts of different other equipment that I can't have permanently in the studio. Like, I have a Launchpad Pro, I have a Launch Control XL, I have different MIDI controllers, I have an 88 keys keyboard controller that I've had for many years, that I have never had in the studio for longer than 2 weeks, because it just takes up too much space. And I can't use my desk if I have the keyboard on it, which means that for 8 years I have not played. I played for like 2 weeks in 8 years, and that's just sad. And this is the problem with a small studio. I've tried many times to get a studio desk in here, but it just doesn't work out. The place is just too small. There are also more things that don't fit into the studio, like my synthesizers. I have an Elmira synthesizer, I have a Crave, and I have a Microfreak, but they don't fit in here, so they kind of just end up on a shelf somewhere else in the house, and then I have to get them, and then I don't, and it's not ideal. On the other side of the desk I have my 2 scanners. I have an Epson V700 and that's a really good flatbed scanner. I don't normally scan my negatives on a flatbed scanner, but only for the 120 and for the 4x5 I use that. For the 35mm I use a Pacon. I got that cheaply when it was still not as expensive as it is now. Got imported, and that was a super good catch. And I use that all the time. I think if it broke, that would really derail me. I love that thing. Underneath that I have all sorts of pens for drawing and painting, materials too. There are all sorts of Copics and different markers and also color pencils and that sort of thing. Drawing and painting is a bit of a problem at the moment because I always need to clear a space, and when I need to clear a space then I normally don't do it. Ever since I have had the computer on the desk, I've not been drawing and painting so much. In the new space there's gonna be more dedicated space to that because it just needs to happen. On the top shelf I have the negative folders and also my records that I at the moment don't really listen to because the sound is terrible in here. Then there are 2 shelves with cameras, and those are mostly analog cameras, but also some lenses that I use all the time for filming these videos. And there's my stereo that I don't really use at the moment either, only to quickly listen back to something and see whether it works. And then on the bottom shelf I have musical instruments like my steel tongue drum and my kalimba. In a little nook between the shelf and the sofa there are also all my tripods, and I have different ones. The typical one that I use for filming and for my 4x5 camera. It's just a newer tripod that was relatively cheap, and it was the only thing I could afford. And I have a little traveling one, and I have a monopod, and yeah, that sort of thing. I also have a really good tripod, a Velbon, but it's too heavy to take anywhere. That's really a studio tripod. I often use it for putting lights on them because it's very sturdy. I don't really have many light stands, I only have one, and that one is in a permanent position behind my desk, so that I have lighting here on me, like this. The light I have there is a ring light, an SD ring light that can do warm and cold light, and it works really well. It's not super bright, and I normally don't use it as a ring light. I normally put something on top of it to turn it into a softbox, but it works quite well. And this used to be my desk light for everything anyway. When I'm building stuff, it's a super great light too. So it's really good. Now the rest of my studio is in 2 wardrobes that are built into the wall. In one of the wardrobes I have an enlarger. You can actually turn the studio into a darkroom fairly easily. I used to do that a lot in the past, but it just does my back in, so I don't do it so often anymore. And there's an awful lot of space, and it's chaos, so it's dangerous in the dark. You trip over cables and break your neck, so maybe not ideal. I used to print a lot more, but now I don't really do it that often anymore. But my enlarger is a Durst M670, and that's a 6x7 enlarger. It can also print 35mm of course, but it has all the parts for the 6x7, and I've used it for that. I also converted it to LED and built an enlarger timer for it, an f-stop timer, which was an Arduino project, and that was a lot of fun and worked really well, and it's very comfortable to use. But interestingly, since I built this, I have used it not so often. So I have this enlarger in the wardrobe, and then the wet part is this bathroom back there. And I can make that completely dark and it works fine. And then I have the trays on folding tables and that works, but I have to sit on a stool and lean forward, and it's always a bit of a mess. So I don't do it that often anymore. The main problem with the studio space is if you listen to music in here, it sounds absolutely terrible because this is a square room, and then there are these built-in wardrobes. It makes using monitors completely impossible. Monitors in the sense, not a screen, meaning audio monitors. I have my monitors under the desk. It's ridiculous. I would not recommend it, and I would not use them like that normally. Of course not. There are these built-in wardrobes which are very resonant, and they start vibrating as soon as I put any music on. It's absolutely terrible to listen to music in here. It's not something I enjoy, and so I have to do everything with headphones. I use AKG 702 ones for open-backed headphones. The other ones are Biodynamic DT 770, I guess? I think so, 770. And those I stole from my husband. Sorry. They're very good though. I use them for tracking mostly, and the open-backed ones, the AKG ones, those are for mixing and mastering. But of course, mixing and mastering in this place is a fun experience that you never want to have, basically. Because the neighbors are so loud. Especially in the last 2 years, it has been absolutely nightmarish because they have been drilling and hammering for near on 2 years now. They always start some big project, the back facade, the front facade, some flat somewhere, someone moves, and it's been a merry-go-round of construction work, and they've been driving me absolutely bonkers. They were sledgehammering right outside my window here. It's behind the camera. This is the problem with living in apartment buildings. It's not ideal, especially not for the thing that I do, like recording things and making videos and all that. So this was one of the reasons why we decided to move, because it was just unbearable here. Yeah, not ideal. As always, not ideal. It's not ideal. It's not ideal. It's not ideal. It is worse than that. Really, I'm just, living with it. I learned a lot from the studio space though. I learned how to make it work even with a space that is, not only not ideal, but really terrible, I guess, for most of the things I do. And I made it work anyway for a lot of things. And that's something to say, at least. Because a lot of people, they think, oh, I don't have any space to do anything. Well, I don't have any space to do anything, really. And I just make do with little corners of little bits of space that I have and store all my stuff in there. But I do hope that I will eventually have a space that is not as messy and as chaotic and Tetris and all that in the near future. We're moving right now. I'm actually sitting here among moving boxes, and I've kept this specifically for you guys so that I could make one last video in this space for you. Now I'm gonna pack all of this as well, and then it's all gonna go to the new place. One of my guitars is even already over there, so I've already started moving in, and it's gonna be absolutely fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. Well, if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You can also support me on Ko-fi if you're really into what I do. But of course, liking, subscribing, commenting, that's already enough. Just, it's an option if you want it. In the future, you can expect more videos like this one. There's gonna be at least one more studio tour from the new place. And then there are gonna be my usual type videos. Some music DIY videos are coming up, especially the Eurorack modular synthesizer stuff is going to come. And I have lots of cool stuff planned for the new space. Anyway, I hope I'm gonna see you soon for another video. Bye! I haven't made a video in such a long time. I don't even know how it works anymore. This time I'm going to get annoyed at my neighbors. Thank God they're moving.